Andrew, you've got, well, over 20 years of expertise in transportation, in infrastructure, and implementation of policy here. How much of an upending is this to the business models of EVs and indeed automakers more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the effect can be understated here. The auto industry, much like the road and bridge building industry, relies on predictability, certainty, reliability. There's a reason that we fund roads and bridges on 5-year cycles, because these are large projects that take a lot of predictability and investment over time. With the tariffs that were announced yesterday, you can just look across the automotive sector and already see the ripple effect that it is having, with sales, stock prices plunging across multiple sectors, including hitting the tier 1 suppliers. Now, I'll say that the underlying goal of these tariffs is quite laudable: to reshore domestic supply chains, to build up manufacturing in the United States. And there's a lot of policies that President Trump put in place in his first term that continued through the Biden administration. Now, that having been said, the practical reality is somewhat different. Automakers have relied on global supply chains for decades, and the days of a Model T soup to nuts rolling off an assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan, are long gone, and they're not coming back. And so really automakers are faced with 3 tough choices right now: either absorb these costs, pass them on to the consumers, or begin a years-long, heavily investment-reliant process of reshoring these automaker supply chains.
Do they have the confidence to take the third option, to recommit and to spend that sort of money when terms are but 4 years?
I mean, I think the word of the day is uncertainty. And the fact is that there was a reason that the EV sector saw nearly $300 billion of investment in just the last couple of years. They were getting clear signals from Washington through the bipartisan infrastructure law, through the Inflation Reduction Act, through the CHIPS Act. And 70% of that $300 billion investment is already specifically allocated to facilities that are coming online. When you have what seems to be somewhat more reactionary and less targeted tariffs and other trade policies coming online, it's much more difficult to have that confidence to begin reshoring supply chains for fears of a whipsaw in a different direction in a couple of years.
It's interesting that, of course, the market is understanding and trading on the idea that Tesla is more insulated, that Rivian is more insulated. But many had put research out there that ultimately the average price of a car is going to go up $5,000 to $8,000. But for an EV, it's going to go up $12,000. And I'm interested as to how the supply chains, particularly with electric vehicles, are being an issue here, considering it's so dependent for magnets, for rare earths and minerals from abroad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two points there. So the first, I would just maybe put Tesla in a slightly different category. I think its stock is long traded on prices maybe untethered from fundamentals. So we'll put that in a slightly different space. But I think the broader point on the EV industry, it is in many ways different than your traditional internal combustion engine manufacturers. And so the Rivians and the Teslas of the world do have a leg up on the legacy automakers who are developing these supply chains online. And that investment that I just spoke to, the $300 billion plus in the last couple of years, that was the legacy automakers beginning that work. And so, yes, I think that investment will continue. But if you're talking about raising costs because of tariffs, which can reduce demand, ultimately leave more cars on the lots, that can impact jobs, that can cause contraction in the industry, and that can ultimately diminish demand, which sends the absolute wrong signal at a time when those industries are looking to invest.
Andrew, you've been the Deputy Federal Highway Administrator. You've worked within government. You've been Chief Counsel on Federal Highways. You've got such a wealth of experience here. I'm sure you're fielding plenty of calls when you get off air. What is the number one question that you're being taken right now from the industry?
Is this real? Is this actually going to happen? Is this the new reality? And I think the answer is that, look, if you take the president at face value, and I'm doing that more and more in the second administration, I think we need to look at the long-term and short-term effects of these policies and plan for what is being stated publicly to take root in some way, shape, or form. But I think the book is still being written on exactly what form that looks like.